Welcome to another episode of Corner Talk. I'm Curtis.
I'm Nick.
And today we are going to review Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them.
I know, this is one of those videos, or not videos, but movies that's kind of been out for about a year now, at least theater-wise, because it came out in November of last year. But we think now that they've introduced the new title of the sequel, The Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald, we figured it would be a good time to review this one. Obviously, like every video we've done so far, we're going to go ahead and say spoiler warning in case you haven't seen it. And if you want to know whether you should see it or not, which at this point you would just have to go buy it, rent it, stream it, then we say yes, go watch it, of course. It's a great movie. You should have already seen it.
Yep. Okay, so what this movie is about is Newt Scamander is coming to America to bring a Thunderbird back to Arizona. And on the way, he runs into some wacky hijinks in which the magical creatures in his briefcase escape. And the rest of the story is about him and his new sidekick Jacob going around New York and collecting these creatures that have escaped.
Yeah. I think going over these new characters is probably the best way to get started. Okay. And let's start off with our main actor, Newt Scamander, who is portrayed by Eddie Redmayne.
Yes. Now, Newt is he's very awkward around normal people.
Yes.
He actually feels most at home around animals, and that is explored heavily throughout the movie.
It's one of those things where really you don't see him around all these creatures, not necessarily halfway through the movie, but a little bit close to the halfway point, and that's when you actually see Newt Scamander be Newt Scamander, and it's great to see. And Eddie Redmayne, he just does such a great job of playing this awkward character that doesn't know how to interact socially with other people. Next, I say we should go Jacob Kowalski, our second lead actor, I would think.
What is really fascinating about this movie is there are actually two audience surrogates in this movie. The first one being Newt Scamander. Now, Newt is the surrogate for the audience member who is familiar with the Harry Potter series, but is still new to this wizarding world of America. There's still a lot of new things that we haven't seen yet. We get to see a much wider world, especially when it comes to the animal kingdom of the wizarding world, and Newt fills that role well. Now, what Jacob Kowalski is he is the audience surrogate for the person who is completely new to the Harry Potter series. He is the one that you are going to connect to if you've never seen a single movie in this universe.
Yeah.
And they both play those roles very well.
And that was the thing I never thought of until you pointed it out, that these are the two different surrogates, and it plays very well, and they both do such a good job. And I honestly actually kind of feel like the actor that portrays Jacob Kowalski, he's probably the best thing about this movie, honestly. Obviously, Newt and the creatures are probably front and center. Obviously, the creatures are so great, but as a character,
I would agree. Jacob is definitely the soul of the movie.
Yeah, he caught me off guard. I didn't know how this, because I've seen this other actor and stuff like Fanboys and other shows and movies, and he's always done fine. But I don't think he's ever had a performance that I've personally seen like this one in Fantastic Beasts. Next is, I would think, is probably Tina.
So Tina. This is the first movie I've seen her actor, and I can't remember her name, but she also played in the new Alien Covenant movie. Don't see that one, it's complete garbage. But Tina does a fairly good job in this one. She's very paranoid, very kind of introverted with her character, and that's how she's meant to be. Not very confident in herself, and she kind of goes through her own little arc throughout the movie where she has to be more trusting of people, specifically Newt and Jacob.
Definitely. She's one of those ones that I guess she wants to be more noticed, especially with her job. She was originally an Auror, but then she had a confrontation with the Second Salemers that led to her basically being thrown down to the wand permits for people that are traveling out of the country into the U.S., which is a huge step down, and it's very unfortunate, but she's still she won't let go. She's still trying to do that job, and she's still confronting the Second Salemers here and there, which is where we first see her actually in the movie with Newt Scamander at the bank and Jacob Kowalski. But yeah, I think she does a good job. I don't really have too many critiques for her.
After that, I think we need to talk about Credence next.
Credence, Ezra Miller.
Ezra Miller.
Yeah.
This is, again, first time I've ever seen Ezra Miller in a movie was this movie. Fantastic actor, did a great job in this one. Very different character than The Flash. Ezra Miller, of course, spoiler alert, supposedly dies at the end of the movie. Going back and rewatching it, I noticed something. There's like, after he is destroyed, what you see is like this little speck of the Obscura smoke kind of wafting up. And at first, when I first saw the movie, I thought it was just vanishing. But if you look closely, it actually goes behind some sort of
rock.
The rock.
I noticed that too when I rewatched it, that it didn't just disappear, that it looks like a smaller version of the giant version of his power.
Yeah.
Because again, in this universe, these creatures or these kids, most of the time they're kids that are the Obscuriol, they're the hosts of the Obscurist. They usually don't live past 10. He's at least almost 16.
There's no documented case of one living past the age of 10.
Exactly. This one, they're saying that Credence's power was so strong that he's been able to survive this Obscurus living inside of him. But my opinion on Ezra Miller in this movie is great. It's probably the best performance I've seen from him. And I don't know if y'all have ever saw the interviews with him, but it's probably the most hilarious thing where he's just like shouting at people, "Give me a wand! I want a wand!" The next one is Graves.
So Graves. When I first heard that Colin Farrell was going to be in this movie and using an American accent, my first thought was, this is going to be a bad movie. Because Colin Farrell, if he's not using his natural accent, tends to be bad in movies.
Yeah.
Not the case with this one. He actually plays a very human character. And there's a little twist at the end where he is revealed to be Garrett Grindelwald.
Yeah. Or Gellert.
Gellert Grindelwald. And you kind of notice it throughout the entire movie, but when I first saw the movie, what I first thought was, oh, that is the symbol of the Deathly Hallows. He must be a fanatic of Grindelwald's. He must be working for him. I never suspected that he was actually going to be Grindelwald, even though I should have thought something because they have the same hairstyle.
But it's other little things too, that when they're in the room when it's just Graves, Newt, Tina. Graves, it's kind of saying, oh, you brought in the creatures to do this and this. So kind of like implementing what, Grindelwald actually wants to do. And Newt's like, I'm not one of Grindelwald's fanatics. And he just has this little smirk. And then he goes back to what he's doing. It's just little things like that where you can kind of start piecing it together. And I think Newt did too in that one scene. When they bring out the Obscurus and he's like, so it's useless without the host.
Yeah.
Now, my favorite scene, though, I think, with Graves is actually at the end when they all think that Credence is dead.
Yeah.
And he's basically trying to leave. And Madam President's like, arrest this man. Take his wand and arrest him.
Yeah.
And they try to stop him. And he's like, okay. And then he just starts beating them all down. Like, they cannot even touch him. And it was great to watch. My only issue with this so far is that Colin Farrell isn't going to be the villain moving forward as far as we know, because obviously he's Grindelwald, and that's going to be Johnny Depp.
That's going to be so weird, because I really like Colin Farrell in this
I just don't think Johnny Depp's going to live up
to what Colin Farrell
did as Graves. I guess next is, like, what are our big positives for this movie?
What this movie did best was it was kind of like an experiment on world building. We got to see a lot of what the American Wizarding Society is like, what the wizarding laws in America are like. We got to be introduced to all these fantastic and interesting creatures, and not only that, and it was just incredibly immersive.
With all the different creatures, the CGI in this movie had to be good, and I think it nailed what it needed to do, but they still felt real, like they actually had personality. But one of the things I enjoyed is where you actually got to see the contrasting cultures of America versus the UK, and whether it's like the names, Muggle versus Nomad, which is more of a US compound version of it, but also just like different things. Like, we know that from the normal Harry Potter in the UK, that when somebody does a heinous crime, they normally either just sentence to Azkaban and they live the rest of their lives there, or
being surrounded by Dementors.
Yeah, or they're given the Dementor's kiss, and then their bodies are still basically left there until they die. But versus the US, where they basically take a memory, like a pleasant memory, put it into this, I hate to say it, this burning liquid, and it kind of sucks you in, and you kind of get mesmerized, and you're just happy right before you basically die. And obviously the other big contrast is that in the US at this point in time, you can't associate with the nomads, you can't marry them, you can't befriend them. Nobody that is non-magic can know anything about the wizarding world, unlike in the normal UK Harry Potter universe where you can befriend.
You can befriend them in the UK so long as you don't reveal the wizarding world to them. You can marry them, and once you marry them, you can either tell them or choose to keep it secret until your child does or does not show magical powers.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that is really cool to see the different contrasting cultures between the two that we're already so accustomed to, but also that honestly, with even in today's standards of the U.S., that would be what it would be if like wizards and witches actually were real and lived in the U.S.
Well,
that probably would be how it would be. But now let's go over like maybe some negatives about this movie. What were some of the disappointing things about this movie?
So the two nitpicky ones. There is a scene at Central Park Zoo where after the huge rhino thing kind of chases Jacob off, Newt kind of tries to stop him with his wand and he gets taken by a monkey. That scene serves no purpose. You could have cut that out and it would have been fine. Number two, there's this weird edit that I saw on my second viewing where Tina is in front of the MACUSA Congress for the second time, having Newt in the briefcase, says a few words, puts it down, and what you see is her kind of getting up and taking a step back really quick. It instantly cuts to her going forward, knocking on the case. What that should have been was her placing it down, staying kneeled, knocking, and then walking back. What I feel like that scene was supposed to be another joke, where she walks back, waits for them to come up, nothing happens, walks forward, knocks, walks back, they come up.
Yeah.
I think that's how the scene was supposed to unfold, but I guess for time's sake, I don't know why they cut it down. And then my biggest problem with the movie is at the very end, when the Thunderbird is making everyone forget, what you see is all the Muggles, or No-Majs in America, instantly forgetting once the ring touches them, regardless of whether they're wearing hats or not.
Or just any water.
Or just any water whatsoever. And then you have all these wizards walking around, no protection whatsoever, and nothing's happening. They're not forgetting, nothing's going on. It makes very little sense. It bothered me a lot. I had to deduct a lot of points for that.
Yeah, but yeah, my big down point, I remember it when I first saw this movie, is again the reveal that Graves is Grindelwald, and I'm fine with that reveal, but it's just the fact that it's Johnny Depp. And Johnny Depp, to me, in the past years have just been very disappointing. He just isn't anything other than another version of Jack Sparrow. And I'm so worried, especially because Colin Farrell Graves did such a good job.
Yeah.
That I'm so unsure. And I hope Johnny Depp can pull going forward. And possibly Graves still may show up. We don't know where the real Graves is.
Well, what we're assuming is that he maybe drunk some Polyjuice potion.
Yeah.
However,
that's been the normal go-to for the Harry Potter world.
If that's the case, what's he drinking it out of? He doesn't have a hip flask.
Obviously,
he doesn't have anything.
Yeah.
So what makes me think is this might be what he might have what Tonks has, or he can transfigure himself.
You know, you're very true. I didn't think about that. I missed that. Other than that, I don't really have any negatives. Like, to me, this movie did such a good job of being something that we're familiar with, but it was, like you said, it's world building, but it was different. And it was so great to see different aspects of this, to see the creatures. I myself am an animal lover, and I loved getting to see all the different creatures. And I wasn't sure when they talked that they were going to be doing a Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them movie, how I was going to feel about it. But to me, this one, I think it hit it. I think it did what it needed to do.
I think
it was better than I expected, and I loved every minute of it.
I got what I thought I would get. Like, it didn't exceed my expectations, but it definitely met them.
But what would you rate this movie out of 10?
Out of 10, I would give it. Oh, that's a tough one. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and give it an 8.
An 8? I think I have to agree. I want to give it a 9, but there's just that final reveal. I was fine with it being Grindelwald. I didn't like the casting. I don't like the idea that they're casting Jude Law. I know that doesn't affect this movie, but it does, honestly, for me. The other point I forgot to mention is the music just wasn't as iconic this time around. It doesn't stick out as much. If I heard it walking down the street, I probably couldn't tell you where I heard it from, unlike the original Harry Potter, like Hedwig's theme. So for me, it has to sit at an 8. We hope you guys enjoyed this video. If, again, we hope that maybe if you haven't watched this movie recently, this will give you that to go back and watch it. And until then, Knox. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed this video here in Corner Talk.
If you liked what you saw, please comment, like, and subscribe down below.
And don't forget to ring that bell so you know when we have the next video up.
Until then,
we like to see you in the next corner. Have a great day, guys.
Goodbye.